Thank you for joining us for the Sioux Falls School District's Family Forum with Avera. Today we're talking about an important issue that touches communities across South Dakota, suicide prevention. Our state continues to face some of the highest suicide rates in the nation, and it takes collaboration across healthcare, education, and community resources to help address this issue. Joining us today are Thomas Otten, Vice President of Behavioral Health for Avera, Dr. David Ermer, Child and Adolescent Psychiatrist with Avera, and from the Sioux Falls School District, Kim Sharping, Senior Coordinator for Student Support Services and the Office of Indian Education, and Becca Dravland, School Counselor at Jefferson High School. Thank you all for being here today to talk about this important topic.
Absolutely.
So Thomas, I'm going to start with you. So how prevalent are the rates of suicide that we're seeing in children and adolescents?
Yes, I'd start broadly and say in America, there's 12.8 million people think about suicide every year. 1.5 million of those people attempt suicide, and 48,000 last year died by suicide. So it's obviously a very significant problem. When you break that down into getting into the kid time frame, in the 10 to 19 age, it is the second leading cause of death in America. So across all populations, it's the 10th leading cause of death, but when you get into kids, second leading cause of death, and maybe even more importantly, in South Dakota, it's the #1 cause of death for kids 10 through age of 19.
That is so scary for parents, and I'm guessing right behind motor vehicle accidents or
Yep, accidents is #1 in most places. In South Dakota, again, suicide's 1, accidents is 2.
Wow. So Dr. Ermer, I think we've sometimes heard about this in teenagers and happening at schools occasionally and then also in adult populations, but why are we seeing this in younger children? Like Thomas said, 10 years old, it's pretty young.
You know, we're seeing more mental health issues in younger children. We saw the rate go up even before COVID, and then with COVID and the social isolation and some of the, even just the negative kind of view people had of the future, and it was kind of a scary time. We saw rates go up even higher. There's a lot of different factors. There's always been traumatic events for kids, family problems, the stress they place on themselves to succeed. They certainly look at social media and some of the internet issues, and not only gives an avenue for extreme bullying that a lot of times kids won't share with their parents, so you see a lot of the cyberbullying, but it carries a lot of negative information. If you look at the news on the internet, it's rarely positive. It's all about these negative things happening. We think that's a factor. Plus, when you're on the internet, it just contributes, even we talk about social isolation with COVID, if you're on the internet instead of interacting with others, it even contributes more to social isolation. And some of the same factors are there, like I said, traumatic events in childhood, family stressors, school stressors. We see a lot of kids, especially when you talk about suicide, and we'll talk about this more, but a lot of times it's a reaction to maybe an interpersonal problem with maybe a parent or even a reprimand at school from a teacher. It can be somewhat impulsive.
Wow, that's so scary. So Dr. Ermer talked about some of those causes, Kim. So what are some of the warning signs that parents can look for to help to identify this?
Yeah, I think first it's important to note that almost rarely is suicide something that's a spur of the moment kind of a decision. There's usually days, if not weeks or longer, leading up to it that these thoughts are going through their head and thinking through it. So there's usually some sort of warning signs that are happening. It can be as mild as, just like Dr. Ermer said, that social isolation, maybe some just changes in their physical habits. So maybe sleeping patterns are different, or eating patterns, maybe eating more, or eating less, maybe hygiene, not wanting to shower, or it could be less desire to do things that they normally like to do. Maybe it's a dancer that loves dance, but all of a sudden not so interested in that, and just kind of starting to see some of that like isolation from peers or withdrawing, to more overt symptoms or warning signs, such as maybe giving away personal items, things that have mattered to them before, talking about death, or maybe writing poems, or just sort of that outwardly talking about suicide, maybe making threats, to even so much as maybe some self-harm, some cutting, things like that, are all really strong warning signs that something might not be right.
And some of those warning signs are really, easy to see, and some are more subtle, like you're talking about. So Becca, as they're looking at that, how does that early identification of things like anxiety, depression, the things that scare parents that it's going to escalate, how does that play into this?
I think the earlier that a parent may notice that there may be some anxiety, depression, or something going on, and it's identified earlier, the less chance of those suicidal ideations coming forthright as they age. And then you can get connected to resources, working with a school counselor, working with mental health programs, and getting connected to different therapies if that's what needed for the parents.
I think
so early identification is very important.
I think that's such a great point about the school counselor, because a lot of times their teachers and counselors are there with their peers. So is that a safe place to go if somebody sees something that they're worried about, and how should they address that in school?
Yeah, absolutely. So school counselors have master's degrees in counseling, and then they specialize, instead of in an agency setting, they specialize in the school setting. So we normally work with lots of students on so many different areas of need, but we also triage a lot. So we may work with a student, then contact parents, and then refer to Avera Behavioral Health is typically one of our standard procedures, or working with Southeastern Behavioral Health, who comes into the schools and providing therapy for students. So we are definitely a very safe place. We encourage all teachers to communicate with the counselors so we can ensure that our students feel safe and are heard.
Anything you want to add there, Kim?
Yeah, no, I think like Mrs. Dravelin said, we really do have some, very clear guidelines and protocol for what to do when you're encountering a student that maybe you're concerned about, whether it's a teacher or somebody in the cafeteria staff or the clerical. They know how to handle when they hear certain comments or they have a concern. There's that protocol in place to immediately report that, because you just never know the level. Was it said in a joking manner, or was it a serious threat? And we want to have a trained professional that's able to assess that and then get them, connected with professionals.
And Thomas, I know you've talked with me about how sometimes those peers are the best line of defense against suicide. So how does somebody start that conversation to take it to an adult or a counselor? How does a parent have that conversation with their child?
Yeah, great point. And in fact, when we've done the research on this and we've kind of looked at what are things that can be effective suicide prevention pieces, one of the most important things you can do is simply ask the question, are you having thoughts of suicide? And it's not, are you having a difficult day? Are you having thoughts of hurting yourself? It's specifically that. Are you having thoughts of suicide? We need to name it what it is. And I think, there's a myth out there that sometimes, me asking that question, I'm going to open up things, or I'm going to plant a seed that suddenly now they're going to be suicidal, and that's not true. There is no chance you asking that question is going to plant a seed of suicide, but you asking that question, if they're really feeling that way, may just open an honest conversation where you can get them help. And so you don't have to have, all the next answers. You ask a few questions about, are they having thoughts of suicide? And if they say yes to that question, you find out as many details as you can about that, but then you get them to help. There's two great calls to action, and I know we'll talk a little bit about that, but 988 is a great call to action. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, there is master's level counselors waiting for you to call or text or chat, and they're available. And in Sioux Falls, the surrounding community here, we also have Avera Behavioral Health Urgent Care, 24/7, 365. It's really designed to be the easy button for families and parents that anytime there's a crisis mental health-wise, they can go to the Avera Behavioral Health Center.
And Dr. Ermer, what are some of those other options for care for folks? Like, how does that work when someone says, I need help, or they call 988, then what happens?
I think that's a good question. They really assess the situation. They ask questions to figure out just how serious are these suicidal thoughts, certainly, and look for obviously the least restrictive level of care. Maybe they need a counselor, but maybe if they're some serious suicidal thoughts and don't feel safe, then you can look at inpatient hospitalization, and anywhere from inpatient hospitalization to setting up counseling appointments or setting up other appointments would be kind of a list of things you can do. But having a professional assess the situation and really working not just with the child, but with the family, like what's going to be best in this current situation.
So we do have a short video on the assessment process that we're going to share so that parents can become more comfortable about that. So we'll play that now.
So when a patient comes into urgent care, they're gonna get registered just like a normal doctor's office visit. So they'll meet with the front desk. Mom, dad, whoever is with them will fill out a consent and some other paperwork, as well as the patient, depending on age. After all of that's done, the first person that they're gonna meet is me, like a nurse like me, and we're gonna bring them back, do a height and weight. It's gonna feel a lot like a regular urgent care or clinic visit. We're gonna talk about briefly why they're here, and then my goal is to get one of the counselors in with them as soon as possible to talk more in depth about what's going on and how we can best help them today.
We come in and we really explain to them the assessment itself. We are gathering so much information, both from the child's perspectives. We want to hear their story. We want to hear their concerns, their stressors, and then letting them know, okay, I'm going to go and talk with the provider. That's what I'm doing when I leave the room, and then I'm going to come back. So I think really walking through that process and knowing that we're going to be communicating with you what to expect. And then even when my role's done, the next team of people you will see will be our intake team. That is another part of our admission process, and that's where they can sign consents for care, and we'll go over that detailed kind of treatment program and what that looks like.
On the inpatient unit, the days are super structured. So they will go from groups to meeting with their care team to art, music, different coping skills, as well as just different tools to help, like when someone's feeling overwhelmed or needs support through like a crisis situation. During the school year, there is like scheduled school time, so people don't fall as behind, but the goal obviously while they're hospitalized is feeling better and returning to like their day-to-day life once they've recovered from whatever is going on.
Kids thrive on predictability, they thrive on routine, and so I think, keeping the expectations of school, also giving them an outlet in terms of fitness, recreation, being outside, just those things that they would normally be able to do and have access to at home as well.
A lot of us are parents as well, so we're going to take care of their children the same way that we would take care of ours. And again, our number one priority is safety and making sure that everyone feels involved and comfortable throughout the admission process. Like, we're not here to judge, we're not here to critique anything that's going on. We're really just here because when people present to us, it's because there's some sort of crisis or unmanageable thing or feeling going on in their lives. And we just want to make sure that they feel supported and have the tools that they need to be successful. Again, both the patient and the parents.
Well, Thomas, that was a really powerful video from your team talking about the assessment process, and we were able to see some inside the facility. So do you have anything you want to add to what parents will see, experience, what the child will experience as they're coming in to us?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is if you have a crisis in your home, this is a perfect place for you to reach out to, because we're there to serve you. You're going to be welcomed into the facility when they do that assessment. So they're going to, as was mentioned in the video, a nurse is going to see them first, get the vital signs and those kind of pieces, then a counselor will see them and kind of do what's going on in the home. And with that piece, typically parents are going to be involved in the first half hour of that conversation or 15 minutes of that conversation, and sometimes they'll talk to the child individually and ask some of those questions in that route too. And then they're going to set up kind of a level of care determination. So it's a very simple process. We're going to help if it, just as Dr. Ermer mentioned before, is it setting them up with counseling? Is it setting them up with psychiatry? Is it our partial hospital program where they go 5 days a week? Is it, inpatient care, or kind of what level do they need based on kind of the circumstances that they're going through at that time?
And how are parents involved in that care? Like if a child does need partial hospitalization or hospitalization, how are they communicated with?
Yeah, deeply involved in the entire process. And obviously it's a parent's choice on where on that continuum, even if they recommend inpatient. They might say, no, I'm not comfortable with that, I want to do this. Or if they recommend one level, it's always a parent's choice, and they'll be very involved in that process. If they do end up inpatient, our staff will reach out to the parent every single day and give them an update of how things are going and what things we're seeing, and there'll be multiple family meetings while they're at the hospital, so there'll be a lot of involvement from the families.
And how can parents help to mitigate risks? Even at home, like that's really scary for parents when you hear that a child's possibly thinking about harming themselves or committing suicide. So Dr. Ermer, what are some things that parents can do to help protect their children before they even seek treatment and things like that?
Yeah, one of the things is keeping their home safe, and one of the leading cause, or the leading cause of suicide is with guns. And so really keeping guns out of reach of the children can be the first safety feature. Certainly locking up medicines that they can overdose on, and just frankly being vigilant. If they know their child has been having depression or suicidal thinking, just keep track of what their child's doing. Certainly we know that substance abuse in combination with depression is a more lethal combination, because a lot of suicides take place under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And then, as kind of that mitigation is letting the adolescents know and the kids know that if they are online or one of their friends says something about this, they're not betraying their friendship if they go tell a parent or a school counselor or somebody. They're actually doing the right thing and really helping and potentially even saving their friends' lives. So that kind of encouraging them to kind of monitor each other as peers, because you read these articles where there's been a lot of warning signs that were a lot of times ignored by peers, and it wasn't done maliciously. They just felt like, well, maybe it's not my place, or maybe I'll betray their friendship and they won't be my friend anymore. So I think really instilling that sense of community and let's be safe together kind of attitude.
Yeah, it really takes courage, but it's very important for people to speak up, and hopefully that person will feel appreciative of that question that's being asked of them. And I know that the school district has a lot of different opportunities for kids to become involved and for parents to become involved in some of this education. So Becca, do you want to highlight some of those?
Yeah, and what Dr. Ermer said is that betrayal of a friend leads me to talk about our Ally program, which is throughout the entire Sioux Falls School District, and it's anonymous reporting. So if a student is concerned or a peer is concerned about a friend who made a comment that made them feel uneasy, they made a comment about suicide or self-harm, students can report anonymously to the counseling or the counselor or the counseling office, which really helps try to mitigate some of those fears that kids have, like, I don't want to snitch on my friend, or my friend's going to be mad at me, or they told me not to tell. This creates a really safe place for students to do that. And I feel like students really take advantage of that, because they're the eyes and the ears of the school. We want them looking out for each other. So we have our Ally program, and every school runs that program a little bit differently, but it is an anonymous reporting system. So if parents have questions, they can contact their school's school counselor to ask about that. We also have at Jefferson Hope Squad, which was just instated last January. We're very excited to be partnered with the Helpline Center, and that is a peer-to-peer suicide prevention program. So we train not to be counselors, but to be really great reporters and supportive friends, other high school students, to then initiate conversations. Maybe they see someone crying in the bathroom that as a staff member I wouldn't see. They can go initiate that conversation. We're building a lot of confidence and empathy and compassion for others through that program, and really just making it a systemic school-wide communication for students to take care of each other.
Anything you want to add, Kim?
Yeah, no, I think that Becca covered in terms of what that reporting could look like in the school. I think I also just want to add that we really want to partner with the parents and the families as well. So when our staff is made aware of some sort of a concern or threat, that family is immediately part of the equation in terms of figuring out what next steps look like and what works for them and what resources are available. So just as Thomas had talked about, once they come to Avera Behavioral Health, the family is really integral in that treatment plan. The same goes for the school district too.
So you've had some really great information, a lot for parents to take home today. What are some final thoughts you'd like to leave parents with?
If I had to advise parents on anything, is just ask your kids questions, be involved. I hear way too much or very often that kids are in their rooms on their phones a lot. So it's okay to ask your kids questions.
I'd probably have to say something similar. As parents, we know our kids best. We know their habits and we know when they're off. And so sometimes we might brush something off as thinking, oh, it's just a phase. They just want to be in their room or on their phones. But it's okay to inquire. It's okay to press a little bit and ask those questions. But then also be okay that we don't have to fix it as a parent. I don't have to fix my child. There's lots of resources and professionals that are there to help.
Yeah, some really good supportive resources we heard about today. Thomas, how about you?
Yeah, a real theme here, because I'd say just engaging with your kids as much as you can and asking questions and kind of knowing where they're at is all really important keys. Suicide is something that's really, really important in our country. It's at epidemic levels, and in South Dakota it's a bigger problem than in most states. So something for us to definitely engage in, make sure that we're having a relationship with the kids and asking the question if that's something that you think is appropriate.
Agree with everything said so far. I would also add that even though it's the #1 cause of death, there's some doom and gloom. Strategies like they're doing at Jefferson High School to raise awareness and to lower that risk have been beneficial and have eliminated unnecessary deaths. They talk about suicide obviously affects the family and the child, but the impact is beyond that. The suicide in a school and a community, they estimate it affects over 1,000 people. Just working with adolescents myself, people who didn't even know the individual who died by suicide are incredibly impacted by this situation. So I think these efforts not only can work, but they can make a huge difference in the lives of our kids and families.
Yeah, there's so many that are impacted when one life is lost, and we've actually seen the partnership with the school district, the helpline, the health systems making a difference in that rate in South Dakota. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you for the important information. For more resources, you can go to the counseling tab on the Sioux Falls School District website.